America's darkest history is not a secret. It was often written down, signed off, and called necessary. It rarely began with monsters. It began with systems, excuses, and people who believed cruelty was the price of progress. They were told they were being treated, but the treatment was part of the lie. That is the center of the Tuskegee story. Not just neglect. Not just bad medicine. Not just a study that went wrong. The deeper horror is that care itself became the disguise. A clinic visit, a blood test, a government nurse, a promise that someone in authority was helping. For the men in Macon County, Alabama, that promise could look like hope. Many were poor. Many worked farms. Many lived under Jim Crow, in a place where medical care was limited and government power did not arrive as an equal partner. So when the United States Public Health Service began a study in 1932, the offer mattered. Free exams, free meals, burial insurance, attention from people who seemed to know what they were doing. But behind that offer was a study designed to watch what syphilis did when it was left untreated. The men were told they had bad blood. That phrase could mean many things. Fatigue, weakness, anemia, sickness, syphilis. It sounded familiar, but it hid the truth. They were not given informed consent. They were not told the full purpose of the study. They were not given the dignity of a real choice. The men were not infected by the government. That matters because truth matters. They already had syphilis when they were recruited into the syphilitic group. Other men without syphilis were followed as a control group. But once researchers knew, the ethical questions were simple. Do you tell them? Do you treat them? Do they get to decide what happens to their own bodies? Tuskegee answered with paperwork, silence, and delay. Their illness became data. Their trust became access. Their return visits became the engine of a study they had not truly agreed to join. For years, the system kept moving. The men came back because they believed they were receiving help. They came back because authority had told them there was a reason. They came back because betrayal can look normal when it wears a white coat and carries a clipboard. Then medicine changed. By the 1940s, penicillin had become the treatment of choice for syphilis. The old excuse that there was no simple cure could no longer carry the weight it once had. But the study did not end. The men were not brought in, told the truth, and offered the care that existed. The machinery continued. That is crucial. Tuskegee was not one cruel moment. It was a long chain of decisions. People had to maintain the records. People had to arrange the visits. People had to write the reports. People had to keep treating the study as valuable, while the men inside it were denied the full truth. This is how cruelty becomes institutional. Sometimes it looks like a form. Sometimes it sounds like a research objective. Sometimes it survives because everyone involved can point to someone else. The name Tuskegee can make the story sound smaller than it was. This was not just a local scandal. The central authority was federal. The United States Public Health Service directed the study while working with local institutions. These men were not betrayed by a lone doctor acting in secret. They were betrayed by institutions that spoke the language of public health. For 40 years, the study continued. Some men died. Some wives contracted syphilis from men in the syphilitic group. Families were pulled into consequences they had never chosen. Then, in 1972, the story finally broke into public view. An Associated Press report exposed what had happened. Poor black men in Alabama had been followed for decades while treatment was withheld, so researchers could observe the disease. Hearings followed. An advisory panel reviewed the study. The panel called it ethically unjustified. The study was stopped, but exposure did not undo the harm. Afterward came a settlement, new protections, and stronger rules for informed consent and ethical review. Years later, President Bill Clinton formally apologized on behalf of the United States government. Those things mattered, but they did not close the wound. Tuskegee became part of the memory of American medicine, especially for Black communities who already had long experience with unequal treatment, neglect, and racial violence. That distrust is often described as a problem. But distrust is not irrational when trust has been broken. This is not a story against medicine. It is not a story against science. It is a warning about what happens when science separates knowledge from consent, public health from honesty, and expertise from accountability. Research without consent becomes extraction. Care without truth becomes control. Progress without conscience becomes a machine that can injure the very people it claims to serve. The men in Macon County were owed truth. They were owed care. They were owed the dignity of informed choice. Instead, they were given a lie dressed as medicine. And that is why Tuskegee still matters. Not because the past returns in exactly the same form, but because the logic can return. The belief that some lives can be managed instead of respected. The belief that people with less power can be used for the benefit of people with more. The belief that official language can cleanse a betrayal if the paperwork is clean enough. It cannot. The most disturbing question isn't how this happened. It's whether we can stop it from happening again.